Well, first of all, we need to explain to the people that listen to us what is the Zaphorizhzhia Power Plant. The Zaphorizhzhia Power Plant is the biggest nuclear power plant in Europe and third biggest in the world, and it's occupied by Russian forces. So that makes the situation so dangerous. If something happens, the results of it can be 5 times worse than a situation on Chernobyl power plant in the 80s in the 20th century. Right now, finally, the delegation from this United Nations agency, which is responsible for atomic power, came into the place. And the whole day, there were provocations from Russian army. They were shelling again the city, which is close to the power plant, Enerhodar. Even in some of the parts of the city, there's no electricity right now. So we hope that this delegation will not just, come as a polite visit for a few hours, and pose for the video cameras, because Russians also took their propaganda channels showing and trying to show that everything is fine, and they're talking to people at the plant. So we hope that they will be part of that delegation that will stay at the plant, because of course what we want Russians to leave. We see that the only way to kick them out is to counterattack in the south, but it will take time. By that time, we need independent experts to stay at the plant to make sure that there will be no violations from Russian soldiers and no more shelling.
So we've been hearing that, they were planning to stay. I think the IAEA leader, Rafael Grossi, said that they plan to establish a permanent presence there. Do you know what that permanent presence might look like? Would it be, to your knowledge, a full team like that, or some other type of designation for a permanent presence? What would you like to see there?
Well, it's hard to say because it's them to decide the number of people that could stay at the power plant. But we feel that the presence at all time could be, sort of a solution before we liberate this atomic power plant, because they can see with their own eyes and ask questions. And also, it is very important to make sure that the workers of the plant will not be harmed, because we have information that Russians were threatening them. They work in inhuman conditions because, there is a limited number of workers and they have to stay all the time on the plant. And they experience threats from Russians, so at least they will know that there are people from this agency who they can contact and tell if there are any violations from the occupiers. Besides, we feel that Russians would want to cut off the plant from Ukrainian energetic system of energy. Because they want to steal basically electricity and to re-switch it to Russian energy system.
Yeah, trying to steal the electricity and some of the other things that are taking place seem to be maybe more like long-term goals for Russia, considering how poorly it's been doing in this war. And some have said that what Russia's been trying to do is to use energy as a weapon in this war. And I'd like to get to that in a moment. But first, I'd like to ask you about your thoughts about the counteroffensive that Ukraine has undertaken in the south against Russia. We hear here in the United States that there has been some significant success in this process in the counteroffensive. What's your view? What's your take on what what's been accomplished with this Ukrainian counteroffensive against Russian forces?
Well, first of all, it just started, and we need to understand that counteroffensive is the operation that needs from us more weapons, more people than Russians who will be, defending basically, but on our land, on the occupied land. Basically, we've been preparing for months for the start of this operation, and the packages of weapons and the help from United States were also used to build up enough of force to start this operation. But right now it's too early to speak, the names of the villages that are already liberated. That's why our armed forces and our Minister of Defense, they ask to be, on the low PR profile on this operation, not to harm, not to tell in advance, the names or the geographical positions. But also we started the country attack not only on the south, but also in Kharkiv region. So, we have this heat up on the whole front line, which is huge. I mean, it's more than 1,000 of miles long. And basically Russians right now are in between choosing where to give more troops to the south or to Donbass. They promised Putin that they will go to administrative borders of Donetsk region to have this illegal referendum, on the whole territory of Donetsk region, and they have not succeeded yet. And this, on the south, they right now are losing territory that they occupied. So I think the Russians will probably use more missile attacks, for example, on the whole territory of Ukraine to threaten, to put us in the position where, they think that we'll give up on this counterattack. So that's why also having the proper air defense system is, is very important. Today, we have the 1st of September, and it's the day when we start school. So since the beginning of these full-scale invasions, our kids, for the first time, go to school offline. And I think it's, it's a big challenge, but it's a big success as well, because just 6 months ago, Russians were telling that they'll be in Kyiv in 3 days.
Yeah, there are so many things that I'd like to ask you about, but time is limited today, and I know you have a lot more work to do. So a couple more questions I want to ask you. Specifically, winter is coming, and Russia, we know, at least according to several sources, is allegedly weaponizing energy. Cutting off gas in I think the Nord Stream 1, and certainly trying to take energy from Ukraine that doesn't belong to Russia. So, what's Ukraine's plan for dealing with this winter? Which, if this war is continuing in the winter, it could be harder for Ukrainians.
Well, Ukrainians, is a nation that is ready to go, into the struggles, because we want to win in the war. So we won't be threatened. Of course, we understand that the biggest threat for us is not just the lack of gas. With help of, other countries that gave financial support, we'll be able to buy the gas that we're missing, because we're also having the gas of our own gas stations and in our country. But what is the biggest threat could be is that Russians could target by missiles infrastructure. For example, in big cities, from the plants that give heating into the houses. If they do that could mean that we will need to evacuate tens of thousands of people if there will be no heating during the winter. But probably, maybe it will sound strange, but I think that the biggest threat for us and the biggest worries for us is to have our back covered and for Europe not to be afraid of this, blackmailing of Putin, because Russia wants to threaten Europe with these gas prices, so the people would, give up and say to their governments, do not support Ukraine because, we are suffering from the prices. And that is the big threat for us. So that's why we also ask America to help. America, Canada, other countries who do have gas supplies of their own, to help Europe to survive this winter, so we could have our back covered.
So the last thing about the support from the rest of the world. There are concerns that this support may go away. What are you seeing? Are the countries that have promised to help continuing to help? Have you gotten what you were promised? What's your outlook on this?
Of course, the position when I say that it's enough, it's when we say we want. So of course, it's still the help is not in the numbers that could help us quickly liberate the land. So if we get the smaller number for these heavy weapons, artillery, it will be much harder and much longer. But I think that there is also this propaganda narrative from Russia trying to say that the West had already forgotten about Ukraine, they have other problems, and I think it's their game to have this narrative in the air. But of course, we need to plan together with Western countries the help that could be not just for days, but for months and years, and not just for the full-scale war, but also to make sure that Ukraine will be able to protect itself after it will be all over, because Russia is not flying to the moon we'll be still bordering Russia, but we need to make sure that the Western world democracy is well protected, because it can happen in 5 years, in 10 years again. We need to be prepared. Of course, I see from other countries such as Baltic states, Poland, those who are closer to Russia, that they also are thinking, will be Europe and Western world united enough to move and to stay strong. And I honestly believe that there is no point of return. All the Western world made their decisions, so it just had to keep going.
Well, Minister Kravchuk, thank you for your time, and we wish you continued good luck in this confrontation with Russia. Thank you.
Thank you so much.